Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Dread Time Stories. I'm your host, Dr. Phobia, and tonight we take a look into the world of creepypastas. Before we begin, I honestly hope that none of you ever awake to the sight of this particular creature at the end of your bed. If you do, I pray your death will be swift and painless. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the Rake. During the summer of 2003, events in the northeastern United States involving a strange human-like creature sparked a brief local media interest before an apparent blackout was enacted. Little or no information was left intact, as most online and written accounts of the creature were mysteriously destroyed. Primarily focused on rural New York State and once found in Idaho, self-proclaimed witnesses told stories of their encounters with a creature of unknown origin. Emotions ranged from extremely traumatic levels of fright and discomfort to an almost childlike sense of playfulness and curiosity. While there were published versions are no longer on record, the memories remained powerful. Several of the involved parties began looking for answers later that year. In early 2006, the collaboration had accumulated nearly a dozen documents dating between the 12th century and present day, spanning 4 continents. And in almost all cases, the stories were identical. I've been in contact with a member of this group and was able to get some excerpts from their upcoming book. Suicide Note, 1964. As I prepare to take my life, I feel it necessary to apologize for any guilt or pain I have induced through this act. It is not the fault of anyone other than him. For once I awoke and felt his presence. I once awoke and saw his form. Once again I awoke and heard his voice and looked into his eyes. I cannot sleep without the fear of what I might next awake to experience. I cannot ever wake. Goodbye. Found in the same wooden box were 2 empty envelopes addressed to William and Rose, and 1 loosely personal letter with no envelope. Dearest Lenny, I pray for you. He spoke your name. A journal entry, translated from Spanish, 1880. I have experienced the greatest terror. I have experienced the greatest terror. I have experienced the greatest terror. I see his eyes when I close mine. They are hollow, black. They saw me and pierced me. His wet hand, I will not sleep. His voice. Mariner's Log, 1691. He came to me in my sleep. From the foot of my bed I felt a sensation. He took everything. We must return to England, and we shall not return here again at the request of the Rake. From a Witness, 2006. 3 years ago, I had just returned from a trip to Niagara Falls with my family for the 4th of July. We were exhausted after a long day of driving, so my husband and I put the kids to bed and called it a night. About 4 a.m., I woke up thinking my husband had gotten up to use the restroom. I used that moment to steal back the sheets, only to wake him in the process. I apologized and told him I thought he'd got out of bed. When he turned to face me, he gasped and pulled his feet from the end of the bed so quickly that his knee almost knocked me out. He grabbed me and said nothing. After adjusting to the dark for half a second, I was able to see what caused the strained reaction. At the foot of our bed, sitting away from us, there appeared to be a naked man, or a large hairless dog of some sort. Its body position was disturbing and unnatural, as if it had been hit by a car or something. For some reason, I was not instantly frightened by it, but more concerned as to its condition. At this point, I was put under some assumption that we were supposed to help him. My husband was peering over his arm and knee, tucked into the fetal position, occasionally glancing at me before returning to the creature. In a flurry of motion, the creature scrambled around the side of the bed and then crawled quickly in a flailing sort of motion right along the bed until it was less than a foot away from my husband's face. The creature was completely silent for about 30 seconds, or probably closer to 5. It just seemed like a while, just looking at my husband. The creature then placed its hand on his knee and ran into the hallway leading to our kids' room. I screamed and ran for the light switch, planning to stop him before he hurt my children. When I got to the hallway, the light from the bedroom was enough to see it crouching and hunching about 20 feet away. He then turned and looked directly at me, covered in blood. I flipped the switch on the wall and saw my daughter Clara. The creature ran downstairs while my husband and I rushed to help our daughter. She was badly injured and only spoke once more in her short life. She said, "He is the Rake." My husband drove his car into the lake that night while rushing our daughter to the hospital. They did not survive. Being a small town, news got around pretty quickly. The police were helpful at first, and the local newspaper took a lot of interest as well. However, the story was never published, and local television news never followed up either. For several months, my son Justin and I stayed in a hotel room near my parents' house. After we decided to return home, I began looking for answers myself. I eventually located a man in the next town over who had a similar story. We got in contact and began talking about our experiences. He knew of 2 other people in New York that had seen this creature we now referred to as the Rake. It took the 4 of us about 2 solid years of hunting on the internet and writing letters to come up with a small collection of what we believed to be accounts of the Rake. None of them give any details, history, or follow-up. One journal entry involving the creature in its first 3 pages and never mentioned it again. A ship's log explained nothing of the encounter, saying only they were told to leave by the Rake. That was the last entry in the log. There were, however, many instances where the creature's visit was one of a series of visits with the same person. Multiple people also mentioned being spoken to, my daughter included. This led us to wonder if the Rake had visited any of us before our last encounter. I set up a digital recorder near my bed and left it running at night, every night, for 2 weeks. I would tediously scan through the sounds of me rolling around in my bed each day when I woke up, and by the end of the 2nd week, I was quite used to the occasional sound of sleep blurring through the recording at 8 times the normal speed. This still took almost an hour every day. On the first day of the 3rd week, I thought I heard something different. What I found was a shrill voice. It was the Rake. I can't listen to it long enough to even begin to transcribe it. I haven't let anyone listen to it yet. All I know is I've heard it before, and I can't believe that it spoke when it was sitting right in front of my husband. I don't remember hearing anything at the time, but for some reason the voice on the recorder immediately brings me back to that moment. The thoughts that must have gone through my daughter's mind make me very upset. I have not seen the Rake since he ruined my life, but I know he has been in my room while I slept. I know in fear one night I'll awake to see him staring at me. That was The Rake. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for listening. Like I always say in closing, check under your bed, look in your closet, and sleep with the light on. The life you save may very well be your own. Good night, everyone.